And in fact, we're really happy to say the Jehovah's Witness leadership has been very, very adamant supporting vaccination.
Situation number 2. How do things change depending on the subject matter of the advice being sought? So in this scenario, our friend is confiding in us a health problem that they're facing. And it's maybe a medical treatment that they're trying to decide on, and they're looking for some input. What's the modest course in this situation? Well, we genuinely feel for our friend, and we want to help them in any way that we can. But here too, the principle, the underlying principle of 1 Corinthians 4:6 applies. That is, not going beyond the limits of our authority. Well, what is our authority in this kind of a situation regarding health matters? Well, the Watchtower said, when faced with a health problem, each adult Christian must carry his own load of responsibility in choosing treatment, end quote. Well then, keeping that in mind, modesty will help us to think carefully before we offer our own medical advice or before we discourage them from taking a prescribed treatment. But what can we do to help them? Well, certainly we can listen empathetically. We can offer them our sincere, heartfelt sympathy and comfort. We can think about what practical help we can give them, and we can reassure them of our support for whatever decision they should choose to make. And how does that modest course benefit them? Well, it dignifies them in that it allows them the right to make the decision for themselves. It also protects them from any undesirable consequences in the event that our medical advice might not be the right one in their case. But it also provides them the love and the reassurance and the support that they need at that challenging time.
The pandemic has been just one of many tests we'll face in the last days. Now, that's not meant to discourage you. It's just reality. Of course, we also want these tests to end, and they will. When you look back at the pandemic from the new world, it will seem momentary and light, even if it doesn't seem so now.
Were you hoping this pandemic would be over by now? I think we all were. In some places, the number of new cases is low, but in other parts of the world, highly contagious variants are spreading and the pandemic is raging like never before. It's a sobering reminder that this pandemic is not over. We weep with those who weep, and we pray, especially for our brothers and sisters in Latin America and Africa, where there's been quite an increase of cases in recent weeks. In other parts of the world, vaccinations have slowed the spread of the virus. We're doing what we can to help Bethelites and other special full-time servants get vaccinated if they want to be. We're happy to report that about 50% of the worldwide Bethel family have been vaccinated so far. Here in the United States, more than 98% of our Bethel family have chosen to get vaccinated. New York state regulations now allow vaccinated persons to engage in a greater number of activities. In harmony with those government regulations, we've been able to resume some of our activities within Bethel. The family was delighted that government regulations allowed those who are vaccinated to assemble. That means we could come together for meals in our dining rooms and for our Bethel Family Watchtower study.
We're all glad to be back together here again.
What a happy day that was to assemble again for the Watchtower study. Of course, the decision to be vaccinated is a personal one. What factors might a Christian consider in making the decision? Number one, as Jehovah's Witnesses, we do not have a religious objection to vaccination. Number two, we're in the midst of a pandemic. As of July 9, over 19,000 of our dear brothers and sisters have died from the virus. Number three, in some lands, the superior authorities have made laws requiring all of their citizens to be vaccinated. In other lands, the superior authorities have not made laws, but they are strongly encouraging their citizens to be vaccinated. We each must weigh such factors when making our own personal decision. We don't know exactly when this pandemic will end, but we know this: Jehovah will continue to provide the guidance we need to get through it.
In our last governing body update, Brother Hurd mentioned that about 50% of the worldwide Bethel family have been vaccinated so far. Initially, it seemed impossible to obtain vaccines in some countries of the world, but it's been amazing to see that now more than 80% of our worldwide Bethel family, that is more than 19,000 Bethelites, are vaccinated, and we are doing what we can to assist the branch offices that have not been able to obtain vaccines. As you know, by keeping the Bethel family safe, we protect the flow of spiritual food and support spiritual activities worldwide. On behalf of the governing body, thank you, dear brothers and sisters, for your tremendous cooperation with all the arrangements during the pandemic. There have been many adjustments in a short time, but you've done so well. We truly love you for your fine spirit in working shoulder to shoulder with us. How encouraging to hear how our brothers are remaining united and spiritually active. But we do have to continue to guard our unity. What is unity? It's been defined as oneness, a condition of harmony. Note how the Apostle Paul describes our role in maintaining unity at Ephesians chapter 4, verse 3. There we read, earnestly endeavoring to maintain the oneness of the Spirit in the uniting bond of peace. Note that it takes effort to maintain our unity. Paul said that we must earnestly endeavor or work hard at it. What could pose a danger to our unity? What if we became too emotionally involved in issues that are divisive? The Bible foretold at 2 Timothy chapter 3 that men would be lovers of themselves, not open to any agreement, and fierce. We see this in the world today. People are not open to any agreement. They quickly become fierce, taking strong positions on all types of issues. As Christians, we are no part of the world. We stay out of those debates. For example, who would have thought that wearing a mask to prevent the spread of disease could become an issue? From the time when we were little children, our parents taught us to cover our mouth when we coughed or sneezed. In his precious word, Jehovah outlined many practical measures that would prevent the spread of disease. So how could wearing a mask become controversial for some? Where is that thinking coming from? We have to be careful. All of us are exposed to worldly thinking on television, on the internet, at work, or at school. There are many websites that promote conspiracy theories. If we are not careful, we could become emotionally involved in these debates. We could allow ourselves to be guided by the voice of strangers instead of listening to Jehovah's channel, the faithful and discreet slave. As we face the end of this system of things, this will become more and more essential to our safety and spirituality. That's why we appreciate you, dear brothers and sisters, so much. As soon as you discern that Jehovah's Spirit is directing the governing body to go in a certain way, you are quick to follow. And as a result, we enjoy precious unity. But one thing is certain. If we follow direction coming from Jehovah's channel, we will be blessed and, more important, will remain united. So, what have we learned in this update? Jehovah's organization is on the move. Even during this pandemic, we see strong evidence that Jehovah's Spirit is blessing and moving ahead the preaching and disciple-making work. Despite many challenges, you, dear brothers and sisters, are working hard to maintain our precious unity. As a result, we are enjoying a spiritual paradise as we work unitedly together. Listen to the channel that Jehovah is using, the faithful and discreet slave. There's no doubt that Jehovah will richly bless all those who support our King, Jesus Christ, and the channel that he's using today, the faithful and discreet slave.
Into this update, it will be a privilege to share with you our Reassuring Year Text for 2022. To begin, though, I have some important facts about COVID-19 vaccines to share with you. Because we love you all very much, and because this is a life and death matter, we have decided to share what we know about this with you. Since June 1st, in the United States, 1,407 publishers have been hospitalized because of COVID-19 or its symptoms. Of these, less than 1% were fully vaccinated. Sadly, in that same time period in the United States, 486 of our brothers died from COVID-19. Of these, less than 1% were fully vaccinated. And our understanding is that the vaccinated individuals who died had serious underlying health problems. These statistics are very sobering. We can also tell you that of more than 22,000 Bethelites and 44,000 special full-time servants in the field who have been vaccinated, we have received only 4 reports of severe adverse reactions that may be linked to the vaccination. But thankfully, it's been reported that all of these are stable and their condition is under control. We share this information with you so you can carefully consider it when making your personal decision regarding vaccination. We feel it would not be loving to withhold these facts from you. As Proverbs 3:27 says, "Do not withhold good from those to whom you should give it." We know it can be difficult to make a wise decision when there are various opinions and conflicting reports that the world provides, perhaps making it hard to know what to believe. But the aforementioned statistics have been collected by our brothers, so we can trust these figures. We hope they will be useful to you. We appreciate that this is not a scientific study. but we can tell you what our brothers have observed. And because we have this information, we want you to know what we know. Of course, we also need to consider the direction provided by the superior authorities. In some lands, governments are enacting laws that all their citizens must be vaccinated. In other lands, it is strongly encouraged. How do we react to such direction? The Remain in God's Love book made a fine point when it said this: today, Jehovah allows governments to have some authority, and we should respect them. They organize countries and communities so that they function smoothly and provide people with necessary services. Christians obey the instruction found at Romans 13, 1 through 7. We respect the superior authorities and obey the laws of the country or community where we live. These laws may affect our family, business, or possessions. Also, the study note on Romans 13:5 says this: a Christian submits to human governments when a command does not contradict God's laws. So this is another serious factor that we each should carefully and prayerfully consider in making our decision. As a result of having over 99% of the United States Bethel family fully vaccinated, we have been able to open up more activities within Bethel in accord with New York State regulations. This allowed the Bethel family to have the Gilead meal together, and then the Gilead graduation on September 11. No guests from outside Bethel were present for either occasion. Also, fully vaccinated Bethel family members in the United States have received permission to take personal time to visit family and friends, taking proper COVID-19 precautions while away from Bethel. In fact, as of September 24, over 3,975 fully vaccinated Bethel family members in the United States have traveled during August and September. Upon their return to Bethel, they're put on a form of adjusted quarantine, and a few days later are tested for COVID-19. Of these 3,975, we have had just 4 COVID cases. 2 got mild cases of COVID at their destination, and it resolved before they returned to Bethel. The other 2, who tested positive on return, also had minor symptoms that quickly resolved. All 4 have fully recovered. We're happy to report that this arrangement will soon go into effect for our Bethelites at most branches around the world. We're able to do this at branches where more than 90% of the Bethel family are fully vaccinated. Those branches are getting back into a more normal routine. Dear friends, the coronavirus is not the worst trial to strike out at all mankind, and it won't be the last. We can expect things to deteriorate even further as these last days march on to their end.
In this update, I thought we might reflect on Jehovah's goodness and the way he's been guiding his people during the pandemic. I'm sure we all agree with the words of the psalmist, found at Psalm 27 and verse 13. Where would I be if I did not have faith that I would see Jehovah's goodness in the land of the living? where would I be? That's something to think about, isn't it? How grateful we are to be associated with Jehovah's organization and to benefit from its direction and guidance, especially when we see where we could be in the confused and divided world around us. With your eyes of faith, do you see Jehovah as directing his people today? Now, we know he's interested in our spiritual well-being, but what about our physical well-being, our health? Does he care about that? If he does, will he make sure that we get good advice, even on health matters? To answer that, let's consider the promise Jehovah made as found at Psalm 32 and verse 8. This is one we know well, but let's look at this from another perspective. This is Psalm 32 and verse 8. He says, I will give you insight and instruct you in the way you should go. I will give you advice with my eye upon you. So here's a promise that Jehovah will give us the advice we need. Now, in the psalm we just read, he promised to give us insight, instruction, and advice. How does he do that today? He does it by means of his organization. For example, think of the information we've received through recent governing body updates. This is evidence of Jehovah's loving direction, his goodness. In last month's update, Brother Lett made a very important point. He reminded us that the information we're receiving regarding the pandemic is prepared by faithful brothers. We can trust them. They aren't motivated by some personal view or political agenda. They love us. They want the best for us. I hear someone ask, what do they know? Wrong question. I think the right question is, what does Jehovah know? It comes down to this, friends. Do I really believe that Jehovah is directing this organization today? Do I believe that Jehovah will give insight to his faithful people so they can remain in the land of the living, as the psalmist said? To repeat the question we often raise in field service, does God really care? Would Jehovah allow the governing body, the helpers, missionaries, a huge percentage of the worldwide Bethel family, and other full-time servants to engage in practices or receive a COVID-19 vaccine that would be harmful? Surely, Jehovah wants the brothers at world headquarters to continue providing spiritual food. He wants to make sure that the work continues at our branch offices and in the field. To do that, we have to be in the land of the living. Has Jehovah blessed our efforts during this pandemic? Yes, indeed. Governing body committees have been prayerfully evaluating when and how to resume in-person meetings safely. Earlier this year, it didn't seem to be the right time to start. Vaccines weren't available in many lands. So, dear friends, let's keep focusing our eyes on the one who is invisible, trusting that our God loves us and that he will never allow his people to come to harm. May Jehovah continue to bless you all richly.
In this update, we're going to talk about how we can make good use of our time during the pandemic. But first, we'd like to share a few updates. We're sad to report that as of December 10th, we have lost 25,658 brothers and sisters to COVID-19. Our prayers are certainly with all who have lost loved ones. Recently, the new Omicron variant has received a lot of news coverage. At this point, there are still many unknowns. Brothers and sisters, we don't need to panic. Keep following the same basic precautions that have worked well. wearing masks, physical distancing, frequently washing our hands, and getting vaccinated if possible. In the 2021 governing body update number 7, Brother Loesch mentioned that over 80% of the worldwide Bethel family was vaccinated. We are glad to inform you that now over 99% of our worldwide Bethel family is vaccinated. And so are over 95% of our special full-time servants in the field. Many of our brothers and sisters have had good results from being vaccinated. For example, in some parts of Bulgaria, the local clergy say that vaccines are poison from the devil. So there's much pressure in the community not to get vaccinated. Despite this, one sister and her husband watched the governing body updates and made their personal decision to get vaccinated. Later, the sister's employer called her and said that in order to comply with government regulations, she couldn't return to work if she had not been vaccinated. How surprised the manager was to learn that the sister was already vaccinated. In fact, she was the only employee who was vaccinated. Everyone else had to be laid off. The manager asked our sister if she had any vaccinated friends who could replace the employees who had been fired. The manager then called other witnesses that she knew to see if they had any vaccinated friends who needed employment. That evening, all the positions were nearly filled. The head of staff asked our sisters, "How do you know so many vaccinated women?" A fine witness was given. In the end, 14 sisters and one Bible student were employed because they followed the good guidance and Bible principles that have been shared in our various governing body updates.
Brothers and sisters, welcome to this update. The Omicron variant of the COVID-19 virus has quickly spread throughout the world. The number of cases has exploded. We're saddened to report that as of Friday, January 21st, 26,813 of our brothers have now died from COVID-19. But there have been some encouraging developments. For those who are vaccinated, cases of Omicron are generally milder and have not led to hospitalization or death. For example, you may have heard reports that there has been a major outbreak of Omicron in Puerto Rico. You may also know that Puerto Rico has a very high rate of vaccination. Although 551 cases were reported among our brothers during the recent outbreak, only 3 of our brothers have died, and it is our understanding that all of them had serious underlying health issues. Even one death is too many, yet we're relieved that so few died. Our hearts go out to all who have lost loved ones. Please continue to be careful. The pandemic is not over, and we need to continue to take practical steps to protect our lives and our health.
So I did a little bit of a replacement therapy, I call it, where you switch from mindless TV watching to something that's a little bit more profitable, which is our own TV station, JW Broadcasting.
As I spent a lot of time watching television, I heard a lot of negative information about vaccination. I was frightened.
I felt pressure from the media, and I decided not to get vaccinated for some time. We often ask Jehovah for guidance. The governing body updates were timely and helped us to make the right decisions.
We are proud of these families for keeping awake to spiritual dangers. Did you notice how they counteracted social isolation?
They have reached out to others regularly. They use video conferencing to stay close to their congregations and dear friends. Did you notice how they addressed their use of social media? They talked about it as a family and decided either to reduce the time spent or eliminate it completely. They have also increased the time they spent together, including enjoyable outdoor activities. And how did they handle tests of neutrality? They prayed to Jehovah and trusted the information provided by the faithful and discreet slave in making their own personal decisions. Very soon, Jehovah's day will come upon all the earth. It's vital that we keep awake. Now's not the time to become spiritually drowsy or distracted. Remember Jesus' words at Luke 21:36. Keep awake then, all the time making supplication, that you may succeed in escaping all these things that must occur and in standing before the Son of Man. By earnestly supplicating Jehovah and applying the fine direction we are receiving, we will be successful. From the world headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses, this is J.W. Broadcasting.
Who really is the faithful and discreet slave whom his master appointed over his domestics to give them their food at the proper time? Happy is that slave if his master on coming finds him doing so. Truly I say to you, he will appoint him over all his belongings. We know the Master Jesus found the faithful and discreet slave spiritually feeding right-hearted ones in 1919, and at a future time will appoint him over all his belongings. So what's the implication? Obviously, even now, Jesus fully trusts the faithful slave. And all of us, even individual members of the governing body, should do the same. But what does the voice of strangers say on this subject? Don't trust the faithful slave. He will mislead you. And who often have the loudest voice promoting this false message? Apostates. Hebrews 13:9 labels false messages as strange teachings. Yes, they are the teachings of strangers. Some examples of their strange teachings are that the faithful slave protects pedophiles, or that slave will exploit you so they can live lives of luxury. Those are both bald-faced lies. Acts 20:30 says that apostates speak twisted things. They do this in order to draw God's sheep away and make them followers of themselves. Something that's twisted is bent out of shape or distorted. They speak twisted things by leaving out vital details, taking things out of context, or in some other way manipulating a truth into a lie or into a misleading half-truth.
Dishonesty includes, and please take note of this definition, intentionally leading someone to a wrong conclusion. For example, by twisting the truth or by providing only certain details, we endanger our peace with others. Why can we say so? How does dishonesty wreck peace? Peace and a peaceful relationship are built on trust. Trusting someone makes you feel safe and secure, puts you at ease. There is no peace without trust. How do we develop trust? Trust is the result of spending time together, speaking the truth with one another. We trust people that act unselfishly and do not use crooked speech, as the Bible puts it. If someone deceived us only once or was dishonest in another way, we might start to question everything they say. One single act of dishonesty may be enough. It can ruin their reputation. As bad as this is, dishonesty has the potential to create even greater damage. Dishonesty can be compared with a highly contagious virus. Dishonesty breeds dishonesty. People who have contact with deceitful, dishonest person are in danger of being infected.
Well then, keeping that in mind, modesty will help us to think carefully before we offer our own medical advice or before we discourage them from taking a prescribed treatment. And how does that modest course benefit them? Well, it dignifies them in that it allows them the right to make the decision for themselves. It also protects them from any undesirable consequences in the event that our medical advice might not be the right one.
And in fact, we're really happy to say the Jehovah's Witness leadership has been very, very adamant supporting vaccination.